Most people experience neither victory nor defeat. Why? Well, rather than step out their front door and shape their world and their reality, most people sit back and they observe and they criticize and they condemn those who actually do. This is the central premise to Teddy Roosevelt's Man in the Arena speech, which I've talked about and explored a few times on this podcast, but I had the pleasure last week of sort of rediscovering it in Sedona. And what stood out to me particularly was just the idea of how okay we are with that middle ground of giving up the highs to not experience the lows. How okay we are with being the ones who merely observe and critique while life around us is shaped. It's like no defeat. No, that's avoided at all costs. We want safety, 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 which means almost definitionally no victory. And when we skip those two things, what we are left with is empty space. A perpetual purgatory to which most of us are confined. Someone I respect once told me it's okay to be hated. And it's certainly okay to be loved. But what you don't want to be is simply tolerated, right? Merely existing is for cowards. And you might be asking, well, what does that mean for me in my world? And that's the beauty of it. Like, I could never answer that for you. You are the only person that can answer it for you. But what I can tell you is that the highs in life make it worth living. I can also tell you that you don't get highs without lows. And so to avoid life's turbulence because you're scared of the risk or you're scared of the criticism is to deprive yourself of life's beauty. Now, am I perfect at this? No. No, I don't think anybody is. And that's the beauty of it, right? That's why I surround myself with people to help push me along. Because every chapter of life demands a new level of courage, new risks. You don't even realize that you've moved up to the cheap seats and you need to step back onto the floor. And it's also, funny enough, easy to see in others, or easier than it is to point out in your friends than it is to point out in yourself, right? Like I talked to a friend recently. He was talking about a business idea and just going through everything that can go wrong. What if I fail? What if this? What if that? And they're genuine, like they are reasonable concerns. But I just sort of posed this question to him, like, well, what if everything goes right? Think about the upside. Are you thinking about what that could do for you and your family? Are you thinking about the impact? Are you thinking about the financial upside? Are you thinking about that stuff? Because that's transformative. And you could just sort of see behind his eyes that switch. Sometimes we just need that nudge, that reminder that says, hey, you're strong enough to be in the arena, making change in your life, taking on the risk, taking on the burdens, stepping into the chaos of life so that you can make something of it. You can do that. Well, Eddie, how do I figure it out? Again, this is a work in progress, my friends, and I don't think that ever changes. But I can say personally, awareness. Awareness is the key. Awareness is everything. Understanding that it often does not come natural to go where you most need to go. It requires courage and discipline. Right? I've invested heavily in multiple masterminds, engaged in very intentional conversations, spending every day in some type of contemplation, thinking about that next step, looking for the right risks. Because I know that when one stays too long where they are, they do themselves, their loved ones, and the world a disservice. When you stay the same, no one wins. But when you're aware, everything of value starts to rise, starts to emerge. What is it in your soul that you know you need to do? Where is it in your soul that you know you need to go? Because once you've aligned with that, you get to go out, step into the world, and begin the process of falling and failing and making your mistakes. But in doing so, there's a few things that are happening at once. First, you're incrementally moving towards meaning in your life. It's been said that progress equals happiness, and I subscribe to that. I believe in that 100%. I also believe in the second thing, which is that you convince yourself that when you fall, you can handle it. You can get back up stronger. It's the mantra that confidence is earned. You're proving to yourself who you are. You're showing yourself. You're watching yourself grow as you take on combatants in the arena that you stepped into. I'm a firm believer that a life of meaning isn't avoiding chaos, but rather knowing you can endure and persevere through it. So I'm going to say it again, and hopefully it hits you the same way that it hit me. Most men live their entire lives without knowing either victory or defeat. Never defeat because they shied away, because they were scared, because the risk seemed too big. Therefore, never victory because the victory requires the defeat. And so this is your opportunity to step out into the world and make your mistakes. To dispel the notion or any idea that a safe, peaceful existence is a victorious one. You will fall repeatedly. But the beauty is you will do so on your ascent to a world above the clouds. Hope. That bridge that connects the present to a more ideal world. The idea that no obstacle is too big to overcome, no situation too dire to emerge victorious, and that you are never confined to how things are. FDR has said, "We have always held to hope. The belief, the conviction that there is a better life, a better world beyond the horizon." Why does this matter? Well, to put it simply, before one can leave the situation they are in, they have to believe there is another path worth taking. It's not always seeing, but trusting. It's a tale of two components. One, the belief that something better is out there. And two, the belief that you are strong enough to bridge that gap to create that world. So let's start with number one. There was a study done by Kurt Richter in the 1950s, and he used rats. And it was kind of a gruesome experiment, but definitely worth talking about because the takeaway is incredible. Right? And I kind of cherry-picked the relevant parts of the experiment. Basically, he wanted to delve into the role that hope plays in our lives. And what he would do is he would drop rats into a jar of water and observe. See how long they would swim before they drown. And for the most part, these rats would swim for a minute or two and then ultimately give up. Right? There was this innate feeling of hopelessness. But then he made a change, and when they were close to drowning, he'd reach in, he'd pick them up, he'd hold them for a little while. And then he'd place them back in the water, and the results between the two groups were night and day. The rats saw in the second group that it wasn't over. Right? And when they were placed back in the water, they had a reason to continue swimming, and they did. Some of them did for hours. The only difference being that they had hope. They saw there was more. And I don't think that's too different from us. The situation may be different, but the rules generally apply, right? So much of conceding or giving up in life, accepting an existence that falls short of our ideals, it's when we don't believe in something more. We stop swimming. We don't give ourselves a chance, right? So instead of creating bridges to walk on, we make walls that lock us in. Hope is knowing all pain, all discomfort is temporary. And the second component is belief in yourself. Belief in yourself to traverse that space between current and the ideal. It's self-empowerment. You can be the difference maker in your life and others. And it's funny, the other day after reading about the Richter experiment, I was sitting in a friend's house with my laptop, kind of trying to figure out what to make of it, right? Because the idea of hope I knew was powerful, and then I wanted to share that story. I wanted to write something that would highlight its value, but it seemed kind of unfinished or simply part of an explanation. I'm sitting there thinking about it, and I hear this loud bang over and over again, and I get up and I run to the back of the house, right, to make sure everything's fine, see what's going on. And my friend's standing there with goggles on, this grin on his face and a sledgehammer, and a huge hole in the wall in front of him. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You just knocked your wall down. And he goes, yeah, I wanted to make another closet. His family's growing, he needs more space, and he just took it upon himself to make that happen. And I just looked at him and walked back out, started walking to the living room, and it hit me. This is a component of hope. Seeing what's not there and doing something about it, right? If the swimming experiment is step one, this has to be step two, in real time. Step one, believing, seeing something more. Step two, taking action to change it now, buying into the fact that you have the power to change your own world. And it's funny because any house or room I've ever lived in, my thoughts always, you look around and this is it, right? This is the situation. This is what's being given to me. How do I make the most of it? How do I play within these parameters? Not, okay, this is fine, but it could be better, by smashing down the wall in the back over there, creating something new. And, obviously the message here isn't about home maintenance, right? This is about taking a sledgehammer to the places in your life in which you are not content, so that you can build in its place something that matters. You look around to your left, to your right, and you're unhappy. That's not the end of the story. That's the beginning of the story. That's where the wheels hit the road. In other words, it's looking at life with the lens, with the freedom of knowing things don't have to be what they are. They don't have to stay the same until the universe changes them. No, they can be what you make them. And what life teaches us again and again is that walls can be stepped over. No's can become yeses. Impossibles can become commonplace. But first, there must be hope. There must be an understanding that your world is a 10,000-foot view of all the little stories you tell yourself and the narratives you believe. See, every day when you wake up and take your first steps, breathe your first breaths, know that nothing simply is. No, it is simply chosen and can be remade. That's what makes life such a beautiful thing. It's flexibility. It's promise to provide what has been relentlessly sought out. So remember, it's when you can't find your answer, when the odds look grim, when the rest of the world tells you no, that you most need hope. Hope, the power, the strength to look within yourself and remember that one life can change and two, you can change it. Armed with this understanding, nothing is impossible. When others fail to see the answer, the light in themselves, in the situation, you become the reminder that light is internally manufactured. We aren't given answers so that we may believe them. We are given the opportunity to believe, and thus we create that ending we hope to pursue. And without this, life is nothing more than a permanent status quo. It's holding our hands to the sky and receiving what life chooses to provide. But that's not why you're here. It's not why you woke up today. Not to accept, but to create. To find hope in the tragedy and the hardship, and to find within yourself the strength to move forward with whatever you decide comes next. That thing that gives you butterflies, that lights you up, that world you see when you close your eyes, chase that with all of your soul. Chase it. It's easy to brush off life's potential as just outside the realm of possibility. To see the ideal as some form of window shopping that you can almost touch. A fantasy to be explored when you sit back in your office chair or pass time in the doctor's office waiting room. But I think these aspirations mean more than that. Not distractions, but a North Star. Not a diversion, but the path. And by the way, I'm not naive about this pursuit and all that it entails, the truth behind it. I'd never advocate that what's possible or meant to be is somehow easy. In fact, I'd argue the only way something is meant to be is if you're willing to commit to the difficulty in bringing it to life. Otherwise, it wasn't meant to be anything but a missed opportunity. Because it surely will be a difficult road. And here's what we come to learn: everything of value is difficult. You know, in an attempt to oversimplify, I often break life down into the easy thing versus the difficult but meaningful thing. And in some ways, sure, that's true. But I can also honestly say it would have been more difficult for me to have stayed where I was, not moved at all, to not have pursued what I believed in. It would have been more difficult thinking about that life I could have lived, the doors that could have opened, and that's just it. Life is about choosing your difficult. The difficult you seek out intentionally, or the difficult you come and let take control, render you helpless. And I think when we find ourselves in routines, or we've built for ourselves a world, we know we don't want to live in anymore, or we've outgrown, it's not that the current is real and the future is not. It's that we, somewhere along the way, decided to face the wrong opponent. Some adversaries make us stronger. They force us to be more, to grow. Other adversaries or opponents, they sit back and they let us defeat ourselves, and that's what we don't want. See, when the world knocks you down, you get to rise again. Wiser, tougher, stronger. But when you keep yourself down, well, there's nothing to be gained from that. Those two opponents, they are not the same. I reference my speaking career because for me, it's where that transformation is most evident. It's where it all began. My opponent was very much me. Avoiding opportunities, hiding from failure. I didn't give life a chance to knock me down. And so it didn't. How could it? I'd already placed myself in chains. And because of that, guess what? I stayed the same. I couldn't evolve. My ideal future was an idea that would briefly entertain me from time to time and move right on. It wasn't until I found the courage to switch my opponents. From myself to the world, I let life humble me. I gave talks where I was nervous and had cold feet. Keynotes where my delivery was mediocre at best, where I barely got by. But with these battles came metaphorical riches, came that trust that had to be manufactured, that confidence that had to be earned. When I got out of my own way, I was able to let the trials and tribulations of life create a new foundation for me to stand on, to redefine reality. And the good news is that anyone can do that. Anyone can ask that question. Is something external in my way right now that I need to figure out, that I need to solve? Or am I in my own way? Am I not even giving myself a shot? Have I settled for right now as truth? When right now is just the less ideal difficult. When I was little, playing action figures with my buddy up the street, we used to think it was cool to see around corners, to see through walls, to know what was coming before it arrived, right? For action figures, absolutely. In superhero movies, why not? But in the journey through life, you don't need to see around corners. In fact, it's counterproductive because it is the interaction with the unknown that matters. It's adjusting amidst life's uncertainty that comes to make you who you are, transforms you and your reality. As far as I'm concerned, the only way to lose is to remain behind that corner, peering out every now and then, hoping to get some kind of advantage or shortcut. Willing to let life pass you by while you wait for the stars to align, thinking that that vision of an ideal life will stroll along the sidewalk, see you and reach out a hand. That wait will be a long one, unproductive and difficult, more difficult than trusting yourself to face whatever lurks around that corner. So remember that who you are is built, and every time you do something a little bit scary or unsettling, every time you wander a step or two outside of your comfort zone, the reward is not just the short-term triumph you feel as you leapfrog that obstacle and carry on. No, you are investing in a new you, a new reality. You're investing in something changing before your very eyes, putting a little marble in a jar that is your potential, and you can't see it, not now. No one's going to announce it to you. You might not even realize or understand until you look back years down the road. But those little acts of courage, they matter more than you know. They're not trivial, and they are certainly not insignificant. When that movie plays in your head, and you think to yourself, I wish, or if only. And the delta between that image and the reality on the ground disappoints you, gives you a little knot in your stomach or dissatisfaction that floats around in your thoughts. Remember that feeling is transferable. That difficult can be exchanged for one that actually changes things. You can get off the merry-go-round and towards a new North Star. Difficult, yes, but we've seen the goal is not to avoid difficult. It's to pick the difficult that will transform your life. It's to find meaning in a world that, if you do not pay attention, will paint your landscape with routine and obligation. And today can certainly be a continuation of that script. A box that's checked, a calendar square with an X. Or it can be the beginning of something that gives you butterflies, that lights you up, that brings you one step closer to the world you see when you close your eyes. So you're scared to start. Scared of what could go wrong. Maybe you're scared of what people will say, scared of what you might lose. Perhaps you're scared of hurting your ego, your pride. Scared of a world that isn't quite as predictable as the one you're living in. These are no small variables, you think to yourself. And so, yeah, why wouldn't you be scared to begin? But I have a question. How scared are you to not go? How scared are you of things staying exactly the same? How scared are you of looking back in 50 years and wishing you'd given it a try? How scared are you of seeing those around you, perhaps with a tad more courage, live out meaningful lives while you watch from afar? How scared are you of being the person who tells stories about how they almost tried, almost jumped? Stories about how things could have been if only. Because to me, that's far scarier. In fact, when weighing these two options side by side, I find that not going is almost always scarier. And maybe that's it. Understanding the normalcy of being nervous to start something new. It's human. It's a mere fight with our biological tendencies. Right? That's something every person deals with, and that's okay. To go is to jump into that pool, to feel the cold water on your skin. And yeah, temporarily it's uncomfortable. There's shortness of breath. But then you acclimate. Right? You're presented the luxury of a swim on a warm summer day. You get the feeling of being refreshed and renewed. Being scared to go is curable. Because in going, the fear is undone. The pain is ultimately diluted. Here's the catch, though. There is no cure for not going. You don't acclimate to dreams never realized or paths never taken. You don't warm up to the question, what if? Next time you find yourself worried about what could go wrong, scared about what could become of you as you embark upon something new, realize the normalcy of that feeling, a sentiment shared by all humans. It doesn't mean you're wrong. Fear is the cost of admission. Fear kicks and screams the hardest when it knows it's about to be broken down and destroyed. This is what life's all about, turning temporary fear into something of meaning. The question is, and should always be, not how scared are you in this moment, but how scared are you to not go? Inaction. Immobility. That's the monster in the closet. Refusing to take the risk or step out. That's where fear, although maybe small at first, grows over time, becomes unmanageable, transforms into regret. So again, ask yourself, although yes, it's scary to go, how does that compare to years from now, wondering what life could have been like with a little more courage? Will embarking upon a meaningful journey be scary? Of course. But considering the alternative, how scary would it be not to? When it comes to the almost 8 billion people on planet Earth, there's undoubtedly a variance in the resources at our disposal, the influence we have. What we all share is the ability to rule over our own lives, our own thoughts. As Thoreau said, think for yourself, or others will think for you without thinking of you. See, life moves quickly. And if one is unable to slow it down, to examine the world around them, well, they'll find themselves a cog in the wheel of their own existence, a pawn on the chessboard of life. Because reality is a battle of self-interest that requires that we build walls around that which is precious, that we protect it at all costs. Your worldview is the foundation for everything of value in your life, yet it's constantly under attack. Attack from the negativity at the gate, the suffering attempting to breach the walls, the outside influences praying that you'll outsource your thinking, that you'll let them rule from afar. To maintain control over your own outlook, it's no small feat. It's perhaps the most important battle of your life. It's the difference between intentionality and chance, the role of the ruler or the ruled. As the saying goes, if you don't build your dream, you will spend your days building someone else's. If you don't ask yourself what you want in life, those needs will ultimately be buried under nonsensical obligation that takes their place. Where there are vacuums in awareness, they will be filled, usually not by actors with the same interests as you. See, mistakes are not the problem. No, mistakes mean you're present, driving towards something, collecting data for this experiment that is life. It's autopilot that destroys. Like that frog put in a pot, heating up so slowly it never knows to jump out. The external world becomes its demise. And this message isn't to instill fear or intimidate, it's to remind you to ask the question that so few ask. How is my life best lived, and what can I do to bring that to reality? If you can think for yourself, you're never out of the fight. If you can think for yourself, you're always a decision away from advancement in the direction of that which matters most. So trust you to do what's right for you. In a world where no one knows what they're doing, I can assure you, you don't need external endorsements or stamps of approval. Take Robert Frost's road less traveled by and don't look back. Don't feel remorse. That's where you're forced to find yourself, to ask the tough questions, to embrace who you are. Because the crowd is antithetical to rationality. Not just because responsibility dissipates, Not just because human beings become essentially well-dressed chimpanzees, but because rarely on the micro level is the collective goal your goal. Have the courage to see that. Have the courage to understand that life is not an instruction manual. Everything around you, you have in one way or another accepted. And in accepting it, you have chosen it. By not saying no, you have in fact said yes. So realize that the world around you doesn't change until your thoughts become the bridge that connects current to future, today to tomorrow. Until you realize life can't make you a victim or a pawn on its chessboard without your permission, whether implicitly or explicitly. No, you have the ability to think, control, orchestrate something greater than what's in front of you. Let today be your next courageous step in the direction of that reality. You weren't put here to live in the shadows of life, to exist beyond the sun's grasp, to stay on the outside, looking in. No, you weren't put here to live in the shadows of life. It's important to remember the difference between now and forever, the distinction between today and tomorrow, because from time to time they look deceptively similar. Especially when we inevitably find ourselves in the darkest of times. When despite our best efforts, our world is reduced to shadows, void of hope. When tomorrow and today have merged into one endless entity, it always seems to be in these times that we forget that right now is just a moment, not an assigned permanence, but a bridge to something great. As Viktor Frankl says, if there is meaning in life at all, then there must be meaning in suffering. We all suffer, we all hurt, we all go through periods of time where we can't see or hear or feel anything beyond the darkness we find ourselves in, but it's there. Darkness cannot be defined without light. It's in the definition. Darkness is a partial or total absence of light. They need each other, darkness and light. The one thing that can bring darkness to its knees is out there, everywhere, all around it. And if there was ever a reason to be hopeful, enthusiastic, if there's ever a reason to believe, it's that a new life is always a light switch away. It's that darkness is as temporary as the day. And the antidote requires only that you believe it to be true. Only that you find the resolve to reach one foot out, to remind yourself of the sun's warmth and the infinite beauty of a world beyond this temporary darkness, because you weren't put here to live in the shadows of life, but to re-emerge like a rocket through the Earth's stratosphere, to swing from star to star like life is a playground and you make the rules. And I think when we look back, we'll be nothing but grateful for those times of darkness. They, in a sense, prepared us for the road ahead by giving us what we need most: perspective, life lessons, a roadmap to follow. Because you don't appreciate the light, the sun, the clear blue skies, the wind on your face, the sound of the waves, the chirping of the birds. No, you don't see the beauty in any of that until, even if for a moment, it is taken away. You don't learn about life's abundance until you come face to face with scarcity. You don't learn to give until you've had your world taken away. You don't learn to love until you've experienced heartbreak. You don't learn courage until you've been overcome by fear. You don't learn to grow until you've been truly stuck. You don't learn to believe until you've looked in the mirror and doubt peers back. You don't know who you are until you learn what you're not. See, everyone finds themselves having wandered into the dark, sometimes of their own volition, sometimes of fate. But like leaves changing color in the fall, the earth on its journey around the sun, a wave emerging and falling back into that which it came, it is not an end, but a beginning. Life's way of preparing us for what's to come, introducing us to the infinite possibility of tomorrow, because you weren't put here to live in the shadows of life, but to emerge from them, to light up the world. No, you weren't put here to live in the shadows of life. There's a quote attributed to H. Jackson Brown Jr. He says, "Nothing is more expensive than a missed opportunity." I tend to agree with this. I also think it's interesting that these missed opportunities are also the most difficult, if not impossible, to quantify. Right, so if you think about our common understanding of progress or growth, it's a sacrifice, right? It's doing X brings us Y. Doing the work gets the result. It's a simple formula, and you can show your proof. You can work backwards, right? I started working out 1 hour a day 6 months ago. This is what I look like now. The cost was 1 hour a day. The result, well, this is what I look like now. But what's the inverse of that thinking? What's the cost of not doing the work or starting the journey or taking the steps? See, we don't think about that. We don't think about the opportunity cost. Our instinct is not to question the actions we don't take. I was listening to an old lecture from Jim Rohn, who I love because he's such a practical thinker. He's got ideas you can literally, plug right into your life. And he had an amazing point. He was talking about a conversation with an old friend in which he asks his friend, who apparently watches a lot of TV, he says, "Hey, what does that TV cost?" His friend says, "Well, I think it's like $500. Jim says, "No, I don't think so." His friend says, "Yeah, I bought it, $500. He says, "No, I think it's costing you about $40K a year." Why? Well, not because of what he paid for the item, but because of the opportunity cost. What his time using that TV could be reallocated to. That's what's so incredible about that point. It's like, just because you don't have something doesn't mean you aren't in fact losing out on it. Time is our most precious of commodities. Its utilization is the gateway to transformation. It should be protected. And, the intent of the message is not to walk around panicking about every second, of every minute, but more being aware holistically how recklessly we use our time. I don't know if you've ever looked at the screen time usage on a cell phone before going to bed at night. It's terrifying. Right? Some of it was necessary, but a lot of it wasn't. And what does that cost? What does 2 hours a day of not moving towards a dream or goal cost you? What about when it accumulates and it becomes 14 hours a week? Or roughly 56 hours a month, or times 12, 672 hours a year. These numbers start to get eye-opening. right? All it takes is a little awareness, and we see how often we dispose of time like it's valueless. Everything we do has a cost, because in doing it, we are making a decision to not be doing something else with that time. And again, I believe in balance. I want to emphasize that. I'm not suggesting that we walk around like robots, clocking in, clocking out, checking boxes so that we don't ever waste a minute, right? As the great Keith Urban says, the best days of my life were all that wasted time. You know, we should explore and enjoy and love and laugh and experience life. But that awareness makes us more intentional with those pursuits. With our work time and our play time, it forces us in a way to prioritize, to ask ourselves what we want. Instead of only looking at progress like this vending machine where you put an X and Y comes out. Well, we can ask ourselves, what happens if I don't put an X? What happens if I keep it in my pocket? What won't come out? What could have existed that now won't? See, just because you don't see something slipping away, that doesn't mean that it isn't. And the immediate, the world in front of you, unfortunately, won't remind you of that. That's a bell you have to ring yourself. You have to peel back the what am I doing and unveil the what could I be doing? What could I be creating? What could reality look like? And maybe you think about it and you find that you're right where you want to be. And that's great. Maybe you realize you've accepted a tolerable existence at the expense of an ideal existence. In which case, I also have great news. You can change that, and you can change it now. We have to understand that you don't only have what's in front of you, you also possess a reality unseen and undiscovered. So don't let the former cover up or diminish the latter. Don't lose the possibility of tomorrow with the distractions of today. Don't forget the cost of inaction with regard to those things that truly matter. Remove the lifelines. Eliminate plans B, C, and D. Let the curtains close and the lights dim. See, the beginning of something new requires the ending of something current. So make life propel you into chapter 2. Let the door slam and lock behind you. Throw away the key. With the boats burned and turning back off the table, we have to make it work. We have to figure it out. Well, how, we might ask, with only these pieces, with only this circumstance, with only these resources? Well, it's funny how when walking away is no longer a possibility, so many other possibilities are born. When we're stuck between the wall and our demons, we roll up our sleeves and do that which we have been, let's face it, running from. We fight. We become proactive. We take initiative. It was always there. We just never had to. So if you can't do it on your own, make life make you. Because the bottom line is there are new horizons that await your arrival. They are always there. But they require you to make the trip, to look out over the vastness of what's before you and convince yourself that what's ahead can become your new normal. And oh, how I wish we weren't biologically preconditioned to preserve, to stay safe, to stay the same. How I wish we weren't constantly being pulled to stay right where we are. Our minds, they love it here. With the rest of the world, the change, the hope, the progress, all on the other side of that window. All outside, all foreign to us. You don't need any of that, it'll tell you. Or maybe, after you conjure up a little courage, it might compromise. It might say, fine, it's worth a try, put one foot out the door, but don't forget you can always come back to me. You can always retreat. It's warm here, safe here, it's predictable here. The mind wants you to know that when things get tough, mediocrity and comfort are always right behind you, ready to embrace you with open arms. And it's for this reason that those boats must be burned, that the door must be locked, and that chapter must be closed. The journey before you, it's going to be difficult. There's no question about that. Anything of value brings difficulty. And when faced with the adversity, the only way to defeat it is to know there is only one way, one option available to you, and that one option is forward. It's through. There is no backwards or compromise. There is no safety. Not if you want from life that which is extraordinary. Not if you want the things we covet, dream of. Whether they're interpersonal, financial, career-oriented, health-related, maybe you just know in your soul that right now ain't it. Any move to something better will present to you its obstacles. And my advice, if it's what you really want, is to have decided before you started that there is no other way. There's no negotiating with yourself. Because if you allow that door to be cracked, life will kick it open. So point the compass north and dismiss any notion that what's comfortable is more important than what's meaningful. When you're cold, nothing is more appealing than that warmth. But warmth is deception, a short-term ploy for you to forget what really matters. An illusion. See, cold subsides, but victory is forever. Knowing that you pushed forward when most wouldn't is forever. Transforming potential into strength when your knees shook is forever. So burn the boat. For no other reason that there is no way forward so long as there remains a way back. Make life make you win. And where most would look around and see evidence of defeat, you'll find again and again in the same quote-unquote evidence the tools to build ladders to new beginnings and bridges to new worlds. There's a saying that I love, that most of life's successful people were too ignorant of the odds to know their accomplishments were considered at one point impossible. And I love it because it highlights that there was never a fallback option, a concern for the statistics. There was no worry or exhausted energy on what if. Rather, it was constant building and adjusting, finding ways over, through, and around the walls that inevitably stand before us. There was no way home, so they pushed forward into their greatness. And so can you, whatever shape, form, or color greatness looks like in your eyes, whatever mountaintop appeals to you, if you want it, if you're willing to decide before you go that you will one day stand amongst the clouds, peering out at that world you deemed wasn't against you, but for you, anything is possible. We are, in some ways, helpless to what occurs around us. There are things that are beyond our control. But the gift we possess, our power, if you will, is the ability to determine what we let in, how we internalize the externalities. We are responsible for being the gatekeepers of our minds, protectors of our worlds. There's a little saying that I aim to live by. It's incredibly simple. Basically, the idea is, if something is not a net positive on your life, start working to eliminate it. If there's a person that is draining, creating more negative than positive, then they don't deserve to be in your world. Stop letting them in. If there's some place you're going that doesn't align with what you value, start working to eliminate that destination from your day-to-day. Stop letting it in. If you find yourself constantly thinking about worst-case scenarios, it's always, well, what if this goes wrong or that goes wrong? If you find yourself missing the opportunity and instead spotlighting the problem, start working to identify and isolate those thoughts so that they can be eliminated. Stop letting that stuff in. The great part about having so much control over our lives and our perspectives is that we get to choose what gets our time and attention. The tough part, though, and it is tough, is that it means we also have to ask ourselves questions that perhaps we don't want to ask. We have to be honest with ourselves, like truly honest. And the reality is sometimes it hurts to do that, to ask, how am I contributing to this pain, this struggle? What am I letting in that needs to be kept outside the gate from now on? And what we often find is that the answers are there. The opportunity is there, sometimes even in plain view. But our attention is often diverted from it and instead allocated to the things that don't even serve us or align with who we are. We've habitualized finding the problems and not the solutions. Now, I can list examples of this over the course of my life all day, right? Epiphanies where I realized I needed to defend the thoughts that enter my mind and better cultivate a world where I can succeed, where I can be happy. Money, for example, the switch from seeing it as a scarce resource, something that everyone's fighting over, how to outmaneuver the guy to the right of me, how to get my hands on this elusive object. Nope. Block that mentality at the gate and let in instead the idea that money is merely an exchange of value. How can I be more valuable to more people? Where value goes, wealth follows. Or as I've talked about before, the injuries I deal with so frequently, right? Keeping the poor me, or I can't deal with this, or whining, I'm willing to put in the work, why won't life let me succeed? Keep all that outside the gate and let in, here is an opportunity to get better in other areas. I can't lift. Maybe I'll take a month or two to crush cardio, to eat better, to build mental acuity. Find a way. Or maybe it's that person who made their way into my life that over time became a net negative. That we've gotten to the point where our coexistence takes away more than it adds. They no longer belong inside the gate, in my world, right? Only let in people who do make your life better. And we have control over all of this. It's about accountability. It's about personally understanding the authority you have over what comes in and what stays out. Very few things in life are just because. Things exist in our day-to-day because we have, somewhere along the line, allowed them to be there. So take some time to see yourself as the gatekeeper of your world. Audit what you're letting in and what you're keeping out. To do so will set you up for a life on your terms. A life that's not wasted, or even merely endured, but one that's lived to the fullest. You can salvage the day. You can salvage the week, the month, the year, the years. All is not lost. It's never lost. The trap is looking back and using what happened to define what will happen. Using what's behind you to map what's in front of you. What brought this to mind? Well, personal note, this has happened before. Today was not a good one. At least not until now. Not from a productivity standpoint. I just got back from Europe, a little jet lagged. I've never had more to do, but simultaneously done so little with my time, which is frustrating. But I'm going to the gym in an hour, and that leaves me 60 minutes to salvage what could easily have been looked back upon as a lost day. See, something that I think is beautiful about life is that you can get countless things wrong. You're afforded substantial room for error. And it's often, you only need to get one thing right. Like take dating, right? Countless wrong relationships. You only need one to work out, right? Entrepreneurship, ton of mistakes, lots of swings and misses. That's built into the process, but the one win can change everything. Or these stories, these ideas I share on social media, right? A lot of them totally miss. They resonate with me and, sometimes me alone. But if one resonates with others, one gains traction, there's a lot of impact to be had there. And so I wanted to share this because it's a slightly different angle to what I've talked about before. Of course, this has elements of, you don't feel like it, well, do it anyway, right? David Goggins would have an aneurysm hearing that I even contemplated not writing today. But here's the thing. It's very easy to group a period of time together and call it a loss. It didn't happen today, it might tomorrow, right? It's easy to look back on what you were and use it to build walls around yourself, to say it's what you are now, when in reality, there is still value to be squeezed out. Just because what existed before now was antithetical to everything you wanted it to be, well, that doesn't mean there's no win buried in there. It doesn't mean between 4:45 and 5:45 here today, I can't share something that's important to me that might help other people identify and dive into something that's important to them, right? All is not lost if time remains. It's a message that, sure, it might be psychologically easier to walk away from the day because the first half wasn't good, but that's not the move. There contains somewhere in there the seed that will grow, or at least begin the process of growing what you need. Jim Quick, he recently said, some days all you have is 40%. And on those days, giving 40% is 100%. Maybe seeing that subconsciously saved my day today. I don't know, but it's very easy to check out when the past was not what you wanted it to be. Instead of thinking, but one right move right now changes everything, changes the momentum, alters the personal identity. You're always one move, one decision away from reigniting momentum. A quote unquote bad day can be completely mitigated with one incredible decision or action. So let's pull this up a level. Where does it bring us? It brings us to those moments we're sitting in bed, wishing things were a little different. Went a little differently, or looking in the mirror disappointed in the day, and instead of letting it define the story in totality, remembering that there's something there, maybe just one thing, one action, one decision, one move you can take to salvage what remains. There's some value you can find that will reposition your outlook on what has occurred. There is no loss here, only the win that hasn't happened yet. you don't allow yourself to be vulnerable, you forfeit your greatness. If you don't risk failure, you have no shot at being the one who makes a statement. If you don't risk them laughing at you, you have no shot at them clapping for you. If you don't risk trading today for a future outcome that's uncertain, you'll never know the fortune that that future held. Yeah, being vulnerable, it's difficult. It's hard, it hurts, but it has to. It's the ocean that separates what you have from what you want. The mountain that stands between who you are and who you want to be. And being vulnerable, it means you stop looking at what can go wrong and you start thinking about what can go right. Because every question's a double-edged sword. Right? Do you release that song? Because it could flop, but it will also kickstart your dream. Do you make that first trip to the gym? Because you'll probably look like you have no clue what you're doing, but it could also lead you to feeling better about yourself than you ever have before. Do you apply for that promotion? Because you could be let down, but it could also lead to a career transformation. Do you see the dynamic here? Every major decision comes with risk, and that's why people avoid making them. Standing out, taking the road less traveled, they shake our deeply rooted desire to fit in, right at the foundation. They conflict like fire and water. See, so much of our stress comes from a need to belong, to preserve a reputation, to be cool. You want a fun experiment? Watch how fast being cool turns into mediocrity. It's doing the things that are not cool over and over again that constitute greatness. The ones who are different, bold, out there, they change things. The ones who are okay being called irrational, okay being laughed at, okay with failing and not getting it the first time around. If you do not let yourself be vulnerable, you never experience failure on a significant level. You don't fail, you don't learn. You don't learn, you don't grow. And if that's the case, forget about the top of the mountain. Safety, comfort, a flawless reputation gets you a nice seat at the bottom looking up at greatness. At those who saw the opportunity and were willing to take a chance. So while you climb, keep your eyes on that big picture. Remember that we outgrow our worries. Through each stage of our lives, we look back and we realize that our previous priorities were misaligned. We worried about things that didn't matter. Allowed our decisions to be guided by variables that were irrelevant. And that's the beauty of risk. It escalates this realization. Pushes us further and further past the little things that mean less and less with each step taken. Your mistakes will not matter. Criticism from strangers will not matter. What will matter is whether you took control and did something meaningful with your life. Whether you followed your heart and your instinct. And I know it's hard, I know it's uncomfortable. I can't sit here and guarantee the path will be paved out in gold. Everything will go how you want, but I can promise this: you will learn, you will adapt, and move forward. I can promise that the critics and the naysayers get smaller and smaller until they fade out of the picture altogether. And most importantly, I can promise that if you don't do anything, you will not go anywhere, and that is the only way to fail. So trust yourself. Trust the process. Believe that you are extraordinary, and go make your magic. What is the complex? but an accumulation of that which is simple. What are big things, if not just a multitude of little things? There's comfort in the understanding that all we have in life, all there is simplicity, easy to understand pieces. It's just that sometimes we stack them so high that they start to take a new shape. But like Greg McKeown references in his book Essentialism, the power isn't always in acquiring answers. You already have them. They're in front of you. The power is in cutting away the things that don't need to be there, removing all that stands between you and your ideal existence. And I think that's one of life's great misunderstandings. We don't need to find more. We need to remove that excess until we're face to face with what matters. And to adopt this principle, it's nothing short of liberating. Chaos, confusion, disorder, they don't imply that you lack the right things. They suggest you haven't stripped life of the wrong things. You have not simplified. 1,000 miles is intimidating when you look at it holistically. It's a long journey. But it's just a collection of steps, and well, shouldn't we find solace in the fact that anyone can take one step? It's not a game of complexity. It's a game of understanding what's in front of you. And what's in front of you is always manageable. So much of our stress stems from forgetting what that journey is made of. Whether it's a change in career, mastery of an art, some kind of personal transformation, the result we want, when looking at it from the starting line, it's too complex to understand, too many pieces stacked up. So let's break it down. Let's find the foundation. What's really there? What are the 1, 2, 3 things we need to do? What is that golden question? What matters? If you lose sight of that, then you will stumble through life. I've learned this. I've lived it. The time I take to myself every day is invaluable to me because I ask myself those 2 questions. What matters? And what are the simple steps I need to take? What can I remove? I was talking about this during an interview this week, my personal growth. And one of the most important aspects has been the understanding and the zeroing in on what's important. I used to take so much pride in composing the background music to these speeches, end to end. Right? I used to love to be able to say I did it all. That was, so I thought, the great differentiator. But ultimately, I learned to take a step back and ask what matters here. What do you care about? It's the storytelling that I love. It's the impact. And let's be real, no one cares who wrote the background music. It's holistically, how does the piece make you feel? Right? And this understanding allowed me to cut away, license the music, save 2 days a week, acquire clarity, and realize my goal is not to be Mozart. My journey is to be one of the great communicators, storytellers of our time, and if a day goes by where I'm not taking a little step towards that, it's the wrong move. Small example in the grand scheme of things, but right on point. It's the power in understanding what matters that makes a difference, that allows you to grow, evolve. And I'm confident that this not only applies to long-term pursuits, but also our challenging times, the dark moments, the periods of uncertainty and discontent. Same concept. Where do you want to be, and how do you get there? What's the simple thing you can do to close that gap? Because you are never helpless. You can always do something. And my friends, those little somethings ultimately evolve into everything. And when we put our phone away, step beyond the noise, spend time with ourselves, we can see how much of life is running in place. Stacking and stacking pieces that aren't even part of the masterpiece we're trying to assemble. If you want answers, start with the understanding that they're buried under mountains of things you don't need. So cut away. Cut away the people and places and things that convolute your story. Cut away the exhaustion of time that provides no value in return. Cut away the thoughts that make life more complex than your journey from where you are to where you'd like to be. As you stand right now, you have everything you need, and there's nothing greater than that, nothing more powerful than that understanding. So why not step outside the complexity that you've manufactured, that you're living in, into a world of clarity, simplicity, and capture what matters. Show them who you are. As Emerson said, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. It is nothing short of courage to walk into that dark cave that is your potential, to become a pioneer of uncharted worlds in search of who you might become. It is courage to leave what will be accepted for an idea that will certainly be misunderstood, at least initially. It means you're playing by new rules, using new metrics. Not the rubric that's already been handed out. No, anything but that. And that is the fundamental difference between those who create and those who react. Those who fight to discover who they are, and those who hide behind the mask of acceptance. It's courage. See, anyone can criticize. Anyone can condemn or tear down. But who's willing to run the gauntlet? Who's willing to subject themselves to that hell? Who wants something better so bad that they'd trade comfort and the reassurance of now for a life to ultimately be proud of? To be excited when the sun comes through the window and they jump out of bed in the morning. There are most definitely complexities in life, and we do our best to understand them, to navigate through them. But that question, that particular question in my mind will always be simple. Do you have the courage to show them who you are? To make that decision? Not reflect back their wishes and their reality like a mirror, but create your own. Harness it. Carry it up the mountain like a torch through the night. See, what I've come to understand is that knowing simply is not enough. Understanding is not enough. Replicating is not enough. What these things lack is you. And if I had to best represent this understanding, it would be like this, right? If you take a musician, a technically sound musician, she can play. A student of music, well, he can understand and recite. An expert in the craft, well, she can teach. But it's only someone who injects their authentic self into these abilities that can touch the hearts of people around them, change their lives, fill minds with wonder and awe. Because when you take a step back and really see what's going on, the songs that are sung, well, they're not sung because they are the most technical or most advanced, because they followed the rules. No, we sing them because they meant something when we heard them. Their authors had the courage to move a step beyond understanding and into the vulnerability that is self-discovery, that is creation. It is a microcosm of life. And in a world where comfort is not only pushed upon us, but it's the essence of what makes us human, saying no, well, it feels like running uphill. When you blend in, you can't be questioned. When you blend in, you rarely lose. When you blend in, there is no risk. But when you blend in, there is no you. And I'm not suggesting you missed the mark or you lost the battle. I'm suggesting that every once in a while, we need to be reminded that the journey has not even begun. That down the road, you'll see those people around you. They weren't so much concerned about you as they were themselves. That everyone is scared, everyone is unsure, no one knows or has the answer. But man, to see that, to feel that and move forward anyway, to know that you're worthy of a tomorrow greater than today, that is a courage rarely understood. And Emerson gives us, with that message, everything we need. The wisdom to know there's more, and most importantly, the courage to show yourself and the world who you are. Sometimes when you don't know where you're going, the best thing to do is go there. A wise man once stated that an object at rest stays at rest. And while his rationale was a little different than mine, I'm gonna borrow from his premise. Right? Because when you move, even if you don't know where you're going, you put yourself on a collision course with something. You put into existence an entity to react to. Some call it destiny. Others call it fate. I call it simply initiative. Because if your journey is hypothetical, you have nothing to celebrate nor correct. A sailboat can adjust its sails once it leaves the harbor, right? It can learn from and manipulate its surroundings, make sure it arrives at a destination, right? It learns and adapts along the way. But from the harbor, it speculates. It expounds upon a path that might be straighter, might be faster, might be more thought out and tied together than the crazy sailors who took off for the horizon, but in actuality, it goes nowhere. In the real world, it is stagnant, and I could be wrong, but I'd make the argument 10 out of 10 times that the real world is where we want our results. And my proof? Well, a journey that started with insurance and evolved into music and songwriting and audio production, then video production, then creative writing, then a sweet spot that kind of combined everything. A spot that didn't make its way to my inbox with an exact address. A spot that required a lot of failure and lessons learned and disappointment, but man, more than that, so much fun. Right, my proof is sitting down right now in real time, letting my fingers create a bridge from nothing to something of value. By the way, after sitting here staring at a blank screen for hours, it's just starting.
Could I be wrong? Could I screw up? Could I wildly miss the mark? Yes. In fact, it happens more than I'd like to admit. But here's the beauty. Even if I am wrong, I now have something to work with. Something has been brought into existence. And well, that means I'm officially further along than I once was. And I've heard over and over again that there is no perfect moment, that you have to just go. And the idea, it makes sense. It's impossible not to understand, but it's one of those things that until you feel it, it doesn't mean anything. How can you miss something you've never experienced? Well, to put it in a way that helped me understand, you aren't going because, what do you have to lose? You're going because everything is to be gained. The answers that you pick up along the way, like the little coins you pick up in Super Mario, right? You have to start collecting pieces of a puzzle that you can then arrange. I truly believe that one of the most important ideas we need to hold on to moving forward is personal agency, self-belief. And I say that because I feel like I'm watching it slip. There are cases where we literally don't know or understand that it's within our own ability and control to change our lives. No person or group or letter in the mail is going to come along and green light your idea. In fact, you might not even really know what your idea means or how it will look. And that's not only okay, it's amazing. It's the marble that you get to chisel away at to create something. See, life is not the perfect execution of a plan. Life is the courage to make your way into a world that no one really understands or knows anything about. And I'm not talking physics or biology or quantum mechanics. I'm talking about the real life that is emergent from those areas of study, right? There is no perfect formula for happiness. But it will always be true that immobility or standing still is antithetical to progress. And there is plenty of data that supports the idea progress equals happiness. We want to move towards something. So that's what this is about. Here's to not being scared of what we don't know. Because somewhere in the realm of what we don't know exists what we need most. So stop waiting for the perfect moment. And yes, begin. But not because it's an ultimatum. Do it because the things that make life fun and intriguing and exciting ultimately worthwhile, they live on the other side of your front door. I'm going to share something that over the years I've come to know to be true. And that's that generally the answers that we look for tend to fall between the extremes. So for example, you have two people. One person is adamant that option A is right. It's a no-brainer. That'll take you to the promised land. Then on the other side, the other person's saying, no, it's option B, and it's not even close. Option B is the way to go. And well, generally speaking, the answer we're looking for falls somewhere right in the middle. That's where the winning formula lives. Not always, but most of the time. The other stuff, the detail, the A's, B's, and C's, the stuff that gets the flash that we spend most of our time talking about, it's unnecessary noise and nuance. To win is to trust your instinct. It's being comfortable with your authenticity as the foundation. And then once you have that, you can choose to sprinkle the other stuff on top as flavoring. But I want to talk about this idea because I've fallen into the trap, and I think others do too, of looking for answers in the wrong places. Of trying so hard to replicate success, to meet other people's guidelines. We're so busy asking what do other people want to hear that we're not asking ourselves, hey, what do I want to say? And in the process, we lose what's most valuable. We end up rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Imagine if Malcolm Gladwell only wrote about what was trending on Twitter or what was popular. It's like, no, he writes about what he's interested in. That's why he's so fun to read. His curiosity and passion always comes through. Or if J.K. Rowling spent her time researching what works, what sells books, what do I need to buy, what's been done before me, before she created Harry Potter, we probably wouldn't have it. Her brilliant imagination wouldn't have been shared with the world because, let's be real, wizards in boarding school weren't exactly on everyone's radar. There was no roadmap to that. Or I think of Jordan Peterson's lectures. Imagine if he crafted his message around YouTube or Instagram algorithms. It would lose all its power and meaning. He's authentic, he's raw, he's real. That's why we watch him. But the reality is, every day, we're told in tailor-made, strategically located advertisements that, hey, John Smith achieved success, happiness, and fame with this product or this service, and without that, you can't get what you want. Or we turn on our phones, we go on social media, and it's hearts and likes and double taps, and we're not saying what we want to say. Right? We're reverse engineering how to get that validation. For those with brands or those in the marketing space, I mean, you know, it's always about trying to understand this mysterious algorithm where your posts will be buried. What we're being asked to do overall every day is manipulate ourselves to meet the demands of the platform or of the external criteria. And I'm not saying it's morally wrong. There's no atrocity being committed. Part of life is adapting. But what I am suggesting is there's a danger that we're not aware of. Amidst all this chaos and confusion and manipulation, we tend to lose ourselves. And when we lose ourselves, it doesn't happen all at once. It's gradual. It happens little by little, one concession at a time. We don't snap our fingers and disappear. We slowly slip away, not by what we do, by what we don't do in order to fit in. You know how everything in our solar system orbits around the sun? Well, what if you thought of that sun as who you are, right? When you're with your friends or family, when you're writing, saying, thinking what matters to you. Without social media, without brands and marketing and societal pressure, just simply who you are. That should always be the nucleus of your world, your North Star. That should be the measuring stick to whether you're on the right track, not the externalities that ask you to change your key so that it fits their lock. What if we re-engineered the way we look at things? What if we built a world where people expand upon who they are and what they care about, where we have the courage to say no to the latest trend or item or advice because it's just not who you are? What if you were that confident? And then, if we think some of those externalities will help us, then sure, sprinkle them on top. But they rotate around you, you don't rotate around them. That's the difference. To be content, you have to be the center of your own universe, living by your guidelines. So instead of looking around and trying to decide your strengths, based on what will be accepted or promoted or what's been done before, do yourself a favor. Take a deep breath, step back, and just simplify. You know what matters. And that's enough. You don't need the world to tell you that. So while the masses fight over solution A or solution B, maybe you'll understand that both of those solutions solve the wrong problem. And while the masses argue, which car goes 0 to 60 the fastest, scream about the features, debate which brand is the most reputable, hey, you'll at least know why you're driving, which is more than most of the world can say. You'll know where your car is headed before you upgrade to that sunroof and those top-of-the-line speakers. I woke up this morning to this songbird, singing her sweet melodies like only she knows how. Perched above the street, looking down at the people, the cars, but somehow indifferent to all that below. Like her heart was fully immersed in her song. As I got out of bed, opened the curtains, and let the early morning sun make its way into my room, I reveled in the moment. It was both simple and perfect, two things that often go hand in hand. And as I made my way to the kitchen for that cup of coffee, I had a thought. That little songbird out there, she'll never understand how beautiful she is. She'll never know that she made my morning just a little brighter, or that she helped lift my spirits after a less than ideal yesterday. No, she's just doing her. And in return, making a mark on a world that needs what she has to give. So what? Well, maybe there's something we can learn from the songbird as we go about making our way in the world. As far as I'm concerned, there have been two great challenges in my life: finding my song, and then finding the courage to sing it. Or perhaps put another way, discovering who you are and then holding on tight in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else, as Emerson said, is the greatest accomplishment. It will always be a challenge to bring our thoughts to life because, well, people tend to only see what's placed right in front of them. And it's just not realistic to place tomorrow at someone's feet, but here's the magic. I don't think that songbird cares about being realistic. See, over time, we've done quite the dance, reality and I. Like a tug of war on where to lean and where to pull. What's worth my time, what's not, when to stay and when to go. It's a gray area that I've had to work through, and I know others have as well, trying something new, taking a risk, sharing their art with the world, going down a path with a high probability of failure. You know, when maybe we think we've found our song and we're singing, but no one seems to hear her. That's when the status quo has never looked so tempting, so ideal. When settling for the easy path has never seemed so appealing. No, never as appealing as when our songs seem to get lost in the ether. We know how hard it is to give a piece of ourselves to the world, and it seems odd not to get something back. But you know, I think this is when you must sing with all your heart and soul. Just like that songbird, indifferent to life below the branches of its tree. Well, so should you be to the factors existing outside the realm of what's best for you. It's not easy to uncover what makes you feel alive, and when you find that, live it. Own it, sing it at the top of your lungs, because it may seem like it's falling on deaf ears. But you just might be someone else's songbird, oblivious, like my feathered friend outside, to the beauty you are creating by just being you. By sharing what means the most to you with the world that, whether you realize it or not, needs to hear your song. So songbird, sing. Yeah, for you, but also for the world. Dream away, because Dreams remind us of hope. Hope that becomes courage. Courage that manifests itself in little steps forward. Steps that over time create a new world that looks a lot different than the one you once knew. So dream away. Dream away, because we have all been blessed with the ability to take nothings and make them somethings. We've all been given the power to take blank spaces and make them landscapes, to see with our eyes worlds that aren't yet there. And what a shame it would be to repress that gift, to label it fiction, to keep it next to our books and our movies. How much a tragedy to allow it to be merely a temporary escape, instead of the permanent beginning it was meant to be. So dream away. Let it lead you, because dreams, they'll either become the stories we tell or the regrets we hide away. A personal evolution or untapped potential. The reason we jump out of bed in the morning, or the reason we keep our eyes closed, clinging to the last few seconds of joy before we confine ourselves to the self-made prisons we built, the invisible walls that separate what we see from the possibility a short trip away. But look around you, one might say. This is reality. And this looks a lot different than the dreams that bounce around in my head. If dreaming was some magic formula, I'd be there already. Well, magic isn't quite my claim. No, dreams are not magic. I think their composition is so simple, so practical, so obtainable that magic, it isn't needed here. In fact, thinking dreams require some larger-than-life magic might just be the problem. Dreams require a willingness to start and a single step forward. The rest we figure out along the way. Every little decision to carry on through the haze of that great unknown. That's where we discover life's possibility. And if that's magic, then my friend, we are all magicians. Okay, he might inquire further, but is any of it guaranteed? Well, that's a highly complex question as we make our way through this highly complex world. But I will do this. I'll guarantee one thing and one thing only. If you do not dream of better tomorrows, today will be eternal. Things will stay exactly as they are now. See, your dream is the North Star that guides the path. The target calling the arrows, it's the lighthouse that brings the ship home from sea. Without a foundation to build upon, you'll have nothing to stand on. So instead of talking about guarantees, let's talk about lost opportunity cost. Let's talk about what happens if you don't go, if you don't explore, if you don't build. What will you miss? See, most people, they only understand what has already been created. Let's not be most people. Why stay in the lines when there's nothing else to discover? Why black and white when color changes the dynamic entirely? The greatest enemy of possibility, of potential, is one's need for certainty. It's the person who talks about something more but knows something more will remain an afterthought. Because as beautiful as it sounds, it's not guaranteed. And because they cannot guarantee something better, they will guarantee the status quo. But I'm asking you to see the flaws in that line of thinking. I'm asking you to understand that our very biology cries out for safety. That we have to fight our urge to settle. Our desire to take the monster we know over the one we don't, because it's the monsters we don't know that put meaning into life. It's the journey that elevates the destination, and while it might feel like what you want in the short term, that long term, it sings a different tune. To get where you need to go, you have to move into the headwind that is the comfort of now. Find within yourself the courage to simply crack the door, to just let a little bit of light in and see how it forces its way into every corner of your soul. Once you feel that satisfaction of progress, you'll be consumed, pulled in, as though the only thing larger than fear of failure is the rush of becoming who you were meant to be. I once heard something that changed the way I looked at the world. Something simple, the idea that we don't climb the mountain for the view. We climb mountains because of who we become on the journey up. The view is merely representative of that journey. The dream isn't in and of itself the goal. It's an invitation to immerse yourself in all that is beautiful, meaningful, worthwhile, jaw-dropping, eye-opening, and powerful. It is what cracks that door and lets the light in. So dream away. Because that dream, it's no threat to your safety. It's what will ultimately save you. So dream away. Dream away so that you capture that sunrise you were given. Dream away so that you are pulled to that which makes life worth living. Dream away so that you never lose that child inside. So that you don't leave the adventure on the table and keep your ideal existence on the shelf. Dream away so that you see the abundance that surrounds us, the hope within us, and the future that calls us for yourself, the people in your life, and the ones who eventually will be. Dream away. Imagine with me a world where you stopped segmenting out the difficulty in your life as other than, where you stopped seeing the turbulence as an obstacle to your journey. Imagine with me life as a symphony, where everything works together to create the whole, where the high notes, the low notes, the pauses, the rests, the tempo changes, all contribute to the overall theme. None of it's unimportant or dismissible. How could it be? Without the low notes, the high notes don't mean anything. Without the rest, you don't get the satisfaction and the power of the moment that music re-emerges. In fact, it was the contrast that created the magic to begin with. All of it is needed, even when you don't understand why. You don't know that this slow beginning, the breaks, the tempo changes, that it will all be the reason you are soon awed by the crescendo that awaits. And how could you? It's one flow. The journey points in one direction. You are in this for the ride. See, in our lives, the obstacles, the chaos, the confusion, they hurt. They're unsettling, so the inclination is to dismiss them, to push them away. This isn't what I need. This is void of value. So get rid of it, we tell ourselves. When in reality, those things are integral components to your song. They are what culminate into your final piece. They're bringing you to that crescendo. Doesn't mean you have to love the challenging times. Of course not. But it does mean we should understand that
Even though we can't see it unfolding before our very eyes, it's all playing a role. My hurt made me stronger. My struggle injected meaning into my life. It made the song richer, the sound sweeter. Today is what it is because yesterday was what it was. And I know when I'm face to face with something that my gut instinct deems to be detrimental, that two things can in fact be true at once. That I need to work to right the ship, to repoint the compass, but also understand that the storm wasn't void of significance. The valley wasn't all for naught. It's gifted me new oceans to cross, new mountains to climb, and new perspective as I peer out over the view. So as you move through the dark, as you navigate the chaos of night, know that the light you're chasing is only meaningful because of the depths you are emerging from. Life beyond these shadows is not where the world begins. It's a continuation of an already beautiful journey you're on. It's your symphony in totality. See, the time will come when you'll look back and you'll be grateful for the so-called inconveniences that surround you now. Your heart needs the contrast that this adversity creates. Your soul depends on the hardship to understand the magnificence of life. It's why now, when it hurts, you must keep going. You have to keep going. You have to let the notes materialize into the beautiful song it will become, the masterpiece it was meant to become. I recently started the book Managing Oneself by Peter Drucker. And there's a pretty powerful point he makes in here early on that I want to share. Admittedly, an idea that I came to a tad later than I wish I did, but the second I did, a lot changed for me. And it changed pretty quickly. Essentially, Drucker tells the reader, stop wasting time on areas of low competency. Like the things that they don't really have a natural proclivity towards. And at first you might see this and think, wait a minute, haven't we always been taught to improve the things we struggle in? Isn't that the name of the game? Well, not necessarily. And in fact, a lot of us are held back trying to become moderately competent in areas we have no business being. When if we just took the things we loved, the things we were naturally drawn towards, we could truly be impactful in those areas, leaders in those areas. That's where you change your life and ultimately the lives of those around you. In my world, I like using math as an example because it demonstrates this pretty well. My second year of calculus, I realized absolutely not. I do not like this. For me, it felt like a square peg in a round hole. I just didn't see a life where calculus would be a necessity. And so I dropped the course and sought out something that felt like a better fit. Now, looking back, could one see my decision to walk away from that class as quitting? Sure, meets the definition. But what happened? Well, I filled that slot, or what would have been many slots if I continued that path, with courses that ultimately impacted my life for the better, that built a foundation for what I do today. They were aligned, right? I got to express myself creatively, to write, to speak. I wrote papers about difficult topics. If I spent my entire life trying to become competent in calculus, it would have been a different story, right? Could I have improved? No question. Like with time, it might have even gotten really good. But would I have enjoyed it? No.
That's not where my skill set is best utilized. That's not what I was born to do. And because of this, my ceiling would have most definitely been lower than someone who is naturally drawn towards calculus and loved calculus. When you find what you love and it adds value, there are fireworks. Right? You become a force to be reckoned with. And I get asked every so often, whether it be on a podcast or Q&A, whatever the occasion, what are your thoughts or suggestions around someone who finds themselves unmotivated? In my first thought, right, the first thing I'd always want to rule out is that perhaps that person has slipped into the wrong arena, right? Trying to win a game that isn't theirs. You know how hard it would have been for me to be motivated every day if I woke up knowing calculus was what was on the docket? How would I have incentivized myself there? There would have been a very clear layer of resistance. Which is why, to Drucker's point, it's silly to allocate substantial time and resources and energy to endeavors that don't lift you up, that you don't care about. Now, I'm not saying you only do things that you're amazing at. That doesn't make any sense either. As my friend Evan says, if you love doing it, but you're not that good at it, or it doesn't add value to anyone else, that's great. You don't need a reason. You don't need to be excellent at everything. But what you have there is a hobby. Okay, I'm talking about people in the midst of trying to expand their careers or build businesses, gain expertise for practical reasons, navigate something of significance. In those scenarios, that's where it's critical to stop trying to make all your 3s 5s and instead focus on making your 8s 10s. That's where, again, you will have that monumental impact. No one's ever celebrated for the things they were decent at. Even if it took you 10 years to become decent, 20 years to become decent. No, it's the things you do well, right? And if you look at the world that way and your pursuit that way, you'll live a happier life and a more productive, successful life. There's so much power in the freedom you have to chart your course, but the first step is understanding you have that freedom and flexibility. It's understanding that when things don't feel right or feel a bit off, it's that it may not be you. It may be the path you've taken, the decisions you've made. Take some time to find a journey that aligns with who you are, and the world will give back outcomes that were previously unimaginable. Let go of what you'll never be good at, right? Who cares? There's too much upside to be had chasing down the things that will actually light you up, that will actually set you apart. The things that will create meaning in your life. When you're at your lowest point, you are, often without realizing it, positioning yourself to arrive at your highest point. Potential energy accumulating to propel you through an atmosphere of new beginnings. See, I believe our adversity is life asking that we submerge and dive deep. Sometimes very deep, just to remember how badly we need that oxygen above. So that when we again come up for air, and we will, we notice the warmth of the sun on our face and the calming sound of the waves crashing on the beach. You don't make the most of what's around you until you recognize that what's around you is the opportunity. And so life reminds us. A taxing reminder, right? It rarely gives without first taking away. It rarely opens new doors without closing old ones. And that, to put it simply, can hurt. They don't teach you in school that growth is painful. But as it turns out, a life without growth isn't much of a life at all. And so we must dive deep. We're given no other choice. Without night, there is no day. Without suffering, there is no beauty. Without those depths below, there is no surface above. Our submergence is our transformation. The cocoon that separates who we were from who we will be. But unlike the butterfly, it doesn't just evolve once. Our journey requires that we are continuously growing a new pair of wings. Life is chaos. Life is unpredictable. Life is hard, but you were built to not only endure in its arena, you were put here to excel. To learn the rules and then expand upon the rules. Sometimes break the rules. You were put here to take the difficulty and provide meaning to it. Piece by piece, as if it were the construction of a rocket to the moon. Little pieces of at one point frustration and confusion and chaos combined, reused, and transformed into exactly what you need them to be. Emergent properties. You just have to be willing to see beyond the now and assemble. To come up for air and soak in all that awaits at the surface like you've never done before. The other day, I was texting with a friend of mine. Out of nowhere, she goes, "What's wrong?" And I'm thinking, nothing, right? I haven't said anything. What do you mean? She's adamant, right? She goes, "Something feels off." I thought about it and realized, yeah, she's pointing out something I've known for a little bit here. Something is off. I'm hiding from myself. Feel a little burnt out, a little tired. Certain areas of my life had become unevenly distributed. In fact, I was flirting with that thing I've always feared doing most. Simply going through the motions. And that scared me. I don't want this, right? I've come too far to feel like this. I'm better than this. How do I fix it? How do I solve it now? Figure it out now. But eventually came to realize the now part just might be the whole problem. Fix the now like it's a headache and me shaking my fist at the sky will be ibuprofen. No, battling imperfection is a fool's errand. It's setting yourself up for disaster. We are humans, not gods. We are perfectly imperfect. And when something is off, don't fight, listen. Don't retract, expand. Here is the opportunity. I'm under the surface, diving down into the depths of my own soul. Hear what it has to say, so that when I come up for air, and I will, the sun will warm my face like it never has. The crashing waves will offer a symphony to my ears that I've never heard. And I'll see that the world I'm taking in is more a reflection of me than of it. As that saying goes, you don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are. And how lucky to have taken a step back, a trip below the surface, to realize again that I am the painter, not the critic. My world had become black and white, not because we live in a black and white world, but because sometimes we forget to put the color in. Sometimes we don't give ourselves permission to expand beyond the parameters we've created for ourselves. So with the breath and the oxygen will come a new appreciation, a liberating gratitude. There's nothing so sweet as remembering that both the castles in the air and the chains at our feet are imaginary. And hey, you get to choose which one to believe in. See, what time has taught me is that there is strength in our vulnerability, in the times we fall or lose ourselves. And I know the inclination is to panic, perhaps assess too quickly, to not hear but talk, to not listen but attempt to solve, which leads to the application of band-aids on bullet wounds. When we are low, when we are lost, it's our chance to better understand ourselves. It's the metaphorical equipment room where we stock up prior to our next ascent. And if I could emphasize one thing, it would be that our perceived understanding of life, it oscillates. Sometimes we feel like we get it. We do. And sometimes we feel like we're sprinting with our eyes closed. It's a riddle we will never fully come to solve. But I do know one thing. We can't change the unpredictability of the world, but by observing, by listening, by getting back up, we can change ourselves. By recognizing our strength, we can utilize the downtimes, as they are the education we've been longing for. Remember, the world does not and will not ask perfection of you, so don't ask perfection of it. You were built to endure, to overcome, and to recreate yourself. Losing your wings will never be the problem. It's forgetting that they must be regrown. That is the problem. So step out. Rise to the surface of your world and breathe. Take in the surroundings that will become your resurrection story if you let them. How do you visualize the road you're on? With its twists and turns, smooth terrain, rough terrain, straightaways, hills, what does it all mean? Do you find it odd that it gets more challenging as you get closer to your destination? Right? The further along you get, the more tension life puts between you and the finish line. Almost like the universe is adamant about weeding out those who think they can skate by. What is the difference between saying you want it and really wanting it? Perhaps it's a willingness to fight through a storm just for the opportunity to find calm and serenity in its center. This morning, as the sun was coming up, I went for a run. A nice 5-mile run down the coast, and the way I planned it out was simple, right? 2.5 or halfway up in soft sand, and then I'd stop, and I'd turn around and I'd run 2.5 back, but on the harder surface, right? Easier to handle, almost like a reward for pushing myself on the way up, right? And things were going perfectly. I made the 2.5-mile run up, and when it came to stop and turn around, I realized what should have been obvious from the beginning was high tide, which means I didn't get that hard surface to run back on. Instead, not only was it softer than the way up, but I was running on a slope. And that just threw my mind for a loop, right? I'm embarrassed to admit I was actually angry about it. You know, I pushed myself hard going up and wanted that breather. Almost felt like life pushed the finish line back 2.5 miles. And trust me, as I'm writing this, it seems ridiculous to talk about, but in the moment, just irrationally annoyed. That was the carrot that had been chasing the whole time. So I begrudgingly, moved forward, kind of trying to figure out what to do, and ultimately just continued forward. And, the emotion subsided, and as usually happens, you pull yourself out of the weeds a little bit. The big picture tells a different story. Different story means different perspective. And that's what I came across, right? This idea or this question, well, why do we expect life to be flat ground? Why was that my assumption to begin with? The easy to navigate path. Why is that the standard? And the more I thought about it, right, the more I wondered if that's the very reason why we underperform. It's the little spark that ultimately lights this wildfire of regret. Because when convenience is the standard, everything else becomes unfair. Everything else is a burden. When the road should be flat, what are we to make of the hills in our path? Thinking life should be easy, it provides oxygen to a victim mentality. And sometimes it takes these little experiences for me to refocus on these subtle realities. The flat ground is not the standard, it is earned. It's a gift. It should be cherished and appreciated because guess what? Life wasn't easy. It isn't easy, and it never will be. But I believe the differentiator is knowing that, right? So I kept running on the slope, feet sinking into the sand. I got my teeth kicked in just a little bit longer, and life didn't end. In fact, I think the mental aspect was tougher than the physical. We're only talking 5 miles here, but when the standard changes, so does the performance. It's about just moving forward. And like poetry, with about 3/4 of a mile left, right, the beach widened. It leveled out, the ground became harder, each step became easier, and yeah, I was running. But in my head, it felt like I was lying on a bed of feathers. Because when you prepare to face life's demons, when you're ready for battle, when you anticipate you'll have to give everything, any adversary that falls short of that feels like wind behind your back. We can endure anything. The question is whether or not we put ourselves in position to. Mistakes, they don't define us. Heartbreak, it doesn't kill us. And criticism, it doesn't shape us. But I'll tell you what, the fear that they do stops a lot of people from becoming who they're capable of becoming. Panicking at the slightest sign of discomfort, moving away from anything but the convenient, when in reality, inconveniences are the path. As Ryan Holiday famously put it, the obstacle is the way. See, satisfaction, it doesn't even exist without a will to overcome. What meaning does a finish line have without miles of self-doubt and questions and fear and dragons being slayed while you prove to yourself over and over again that you know what? I am more. And I can be more. And the crazy thing is that there's not even a stopping point here. This rocket will propel as high into the ether as you choose to take it. And look, it's not about running on slight inclines or sinking a few inches into the sand. It's not about being rejected, losing, or castigated by 7 billion self-interested souls. No, it's about not being scared to take the bridge that connects current to future, complacency to recreation, the known to the seemingly impossible. You're made of so much more than you give yourself credit for. You are so much stronger than you think you are. So for yourself and for the world, capture that. Own it and redefine what it means not to simply exist, but to your core, with every ounce of your being, your soul, every fiber in your body, to truly live. I walked up to the canyon's edge and I looked down. I remember thinking, this is my moment. I took a breath, I stepped back, and I screamed. At the top of my lungs, I screamed, and out came my plans and my hopes and my dreams. I let the world know everything I've been building and everything I planned to build. Everything I knew and everything I intended to learn. I explained everything. I felt all of me turn messenger, packaged into these tiny airwaves and dispersed to the sky, echoing one more time as they left, as if for approval. And then nothing. No problem. I thought I'll just wait. But the second hand kept ticking and still nothing. No answers and no approvals and no guarantees. What was left to do but stand up and scream again? And I did, and all I got was my own voice pushing through the canyon. Did I say the right thing? Did I make the right plan? Can you be right and alone at the same time? I don't know. I'll wait. Because surely someone cares. Someone has to care. Don't people care? At that moment, a tear rolled down my cheek as I sighed, sat down, exhausted, tired of screaming and not being heard, tired of swinging and missing, tired of every attempt being the one that might change everything. I was tired of it all. Forget it. Time to go somewhere else. I wasn't sure where, but let's face it, it doesn't really matter when the only way to go is up. So I turned around and took my first few steps. Defeated, eyes down at my feet as they marched me away unceremoniously. But then I heard it. Something in front of me. And I immediately lifted my gaze from my shoes and stopped dead in my tracks. I couldn't believe what I saw. A sea of people standing there. People that had been gathering this whole time, making their way up the canyon as my back was turned, as I yelled and yelled. Some I knew, some I didn't. Some who cared so much that my pain was essentially their pain. Some I've helped along the way, and some who have helped me. Some I've laughed with, some I've cried with, some I've learned from, some who have learned from me. Some who felt exactly as I had, alone, tired, exhausted. Some who felt lost but found their way. Others who thought they had everything figured out but for that moment were lost. Some who felt like they had the weight of the world on their shoulders. Others simply looking for anything to carry. All there. Not to hand me answers or a shortcut or any perfect solution, but apparently to remind me that when the answers aren't in front of you, and trust me, they won't be more than they will be, You have to trust what's behind you. What brought you to that canyon's ledge? You have to believe in the things you cannot see. Because you can think you're alone and be loved by many, and you can feel like you're losing and be right where you need to be. Life can seem like it's over when it is in fact just beginning. Those words bouncing off your lips, they don't disappear. In fact, by speaking them, you are giving them life. They become as real as the hand in front of your face, and it's up to you to never let that blank space make you think otherwise. To never let what you don't have minimize or mitigate what you do. Because the tricky thing about that abyss beyond the canyon's ledge is that it's not for reassurance or compliments or ego boosts. No, it's the real deal. It's for carving away at who you might be, and that's never going to be easy. In fact, it's always going to make you ask yourself the tough questions. And the hardest part is that we'll often leave you alone to answer them. But alone for the moment, not for the journey. The echo through the canyons highlights the power of what you have to say, and the river down below emphasizes how high you've already climbed, and those people behind you, they are your strength. Your reminder that even in the darkest of moments, the most trying of times, you are not alone. Let those dreams leave your lips and fly off into that abyss. Because as hard as it may be to understand in the moment, they are in fact making their way back to you.
Feeling stuck is a feature, not a bug. Having moments of doubt is a feature, not a bug. Losing perspective from time to time is a feature, not a bug. There's no way to step out into the world and avoid these things. Therefore, the question is not, will these moments arise? The question is, when they inevitably do, what will you make of them? And I think that fork in the road is often very misunderstood. How you look at the world around you is everything. Not because, as the great Tony Robbins says, you close your eyes and chant, there's no weeds, and they're suddenly gone from your garden, but because it's indicative of the choice we have. That when something happens, we don't always get to control how it unfolds before us, but we do get to choose what it means. And that's it. A simple decision. And you can see how it's just as easy to go one way as it is to go another. Right? Citing another brilliant voice in this space, Jim Rohn used to say something along the lines of, success is easy. Right? It's nothing more than a few simple decisions every day. Well, when asked, why isn't everyone successful? He'd say, because being unsuccessful is easy too. Choosing not to do those things is easy too. Right? Everything is about your decoder. The world provides the pieces, but it makes you the architect. And so, what are you building? The ones who have had the greatest impact, designed beautiful change, added value to the world, they did it through chaos. Yet, those who are the angriest, who've done very little with the gifts allotted to them, they'll cite some variation of chaos for the reason they haven't succeeded. It's the lens, it's the decoder, it's the fork in the road, and you choosing which direction you will take. If you're feeling trapped in a routine, you have, in some capacity, taken the pieces around you and created a story of limitation. You're forgetting that nothing is stopping you from trying something new today, taking a risk today. When you're feeling insufficient or like everyone around you has it all figured out, you've taken the pieces and created a story of imaginary adversaries. This is not you versus the world. It is you versus you. This moment has given you a fresh start, a chance to find alignment with that which is meaningful to you. One of my favorite metaphors, life is a staircase, where the chaos and the turbulence are ultimately there for you to tame and then move on to the next step. In fact, that's the only way we climb. The world will consist of challenges, and one of the most important gifts we can give to ourselves is to remove the notion that we can just waltz on through with zero problems. Having that as the benchmark sets us up for failure. There is no perfect path or pursuit. Instead, ask, where is the value? When we fall, ask, where is the value? How can I rise, grow, adjust? That's why perspective is everything. One man or woman's business failure is the reason he says, I tried, and talks about what could have been over beer with his buddies for the next decade. Another man or woman's failure is the reason she's able to pinpoint where the problems existed and come back stronger, wiser, armed with solutions. See, these aren't wildly different circumstances or initial occurrences. What has occurred are wildly different interpretations, wildly different reactions. Trust me, I'm human. I get the instinct to point out at the world, to shake your fist at the sky, turn your back on the opportunity. But in truth, that's the only way to ensure value is not obtained. There's a Stoic anecdote about a teacher on a boat out at sea during a storm, and it's enormous, right? The waves are crashing over the side of the boat, rocking the boat back and forth. And that teacher turns pale just like everyone else. He freezes in fear just like everyone else. The only difference is the teacher is not crying out or screaming, right? And the message here is that the initial reaction, that's human. It's human to feel anger. It's human to feel frustration, fear, doubt. The difference comes down to, can you pause? Can you collect yourself and instead of immersing yourself in the emotion, ask, what can I become from this? That is power. A relationship ended. Okay. How can I now plant a seed to greater fulfillment? The plan didn't work. Okay. Why? What can I learn that will be advantageous on the next approach? I'm lost. I don't know what to do. Okay. Instead of thinking less of yourself for the lack of knowledge, how about appreciating the fact that you've established a foundation upon which a solution can now be sought? Losses do not exist so long as adversity is pointed out and transformed into value. And whether or not that happens is entirely up to you. When it hurts, there is value. When you're down, there is value. There's always something so long as we learn to find it. And that's what will make all the difference. Adversity is not avoidable, but living right means knowing it can't be avoided because it's a requirement. It's from the chaos that calm and order and meaning and growth and momentum are obtained. So even though you may be tempted to turn your back, to run or cry out when the winds are strong and the waves come crashing down on your reality, remember that you can not only withstand the disarray, but you can come out on the other side stronger. Had a window seat on the plane a few days ago, and during the descent, I watched as we lowered into a thin layer of clouds, which anyone who's flown before knows creates turbulence, right? The plane starts to shake. For a brief moment, can't see anything outside the window, only white. And no matter how many times I watched this happen, and at this point, probably in the hundreds, I can't help but feel a little uneasy. Heart rate increases a little bit. It's just an uncomfortable thing. And here's the deal. Not only is a plane going through turbulence safe, a quick Google search will explain to you that no plane was ever brought down by turbulence. They were built specifically for that, to endure it. And I know that, I understand it, I believe it. I guess that, faint nervousness I feel highlights the divide between my mental capacity to understand something and, my physiological reaction to it. It shows, to put it simply, that often what's necessary will be uncomfortable. Right? Will get easier over time, but the point is there's a very real biological resistance associated with doing what's necessary. Even when we know the necessary thing is the right thing. Even when we know we're capable of enduring the journey, right? Just like that plane was built specifically to endure turbulence. Well, in your own world, so were you. And yeah, that world might shake. Yeah, you might look around and see an unknown providing no clarity or visibility, at least in the moment. But that feeling of discomfort should not be interpreted as negative, a sign to stop or turn back, as a signal that the world is too much. No, it's where you close your eyes and remind yourself how much you can handle, despite life trying to make you feel to the contrary. You were built to overcome, made to push into uncharted territory, to take your losses and uncover the hidden away value within them. Sometimes to grow, it's required that we learn not to resist that trembling, but to see it as the courage to say yes, when it would have been infinitely easier to say no. And that's what this is about. Nothing groundbreaking, no secret formulas, just the reminder we often need but don't hear enough. That during the ascents and descents of life, and there are and will be many, know that you were built for the turbulence. You can harness the chaos, you can get through to the other side. What's required is simply that you remember who you are and what you're capable of. Because again, when visibility is limited and our worlds shake, it's easy to forget. You will not lose because of the challenge. You will win despite it again and again and again. And sure, stepping up to face that adversary, you may never detach from that nervous feeling in your stomach or the shaky hands, but that's okay. That's your indicator that you're alive, that you weren't tricked into submitting to a very beatable opponent, that you didn't turn away from the things that meant the most. When the ground beneath us shakes, we crave stability. When the heavens open up and rain pours down, we run for shelter. When life presents us with vagueness, with flashes of possibility, we long for mastery. It's more instinct than anything else. But could it be that that instinct,
that we run to like moths to a flame is leading us astray, that it doesn't have our best interests at heart? Could it be that we're so worried about protecting and maintaining an acceptable image for the world that we forget to build something internally that's worth protecting? What if that shaking is what brings down the foundations that held us back? What if that rain washes away the limits of yesterday as we evolve into something more? And what if those flashes of possibility require of us not mastery, no, not yet, but a willingness to be the fool? And what if that willingness isn't an unfortunate dead end, but a beginning? In one of his lectures at the University of Toronto, Jordan Peterson said, if you are not willing to be a fool, you can't be a master. In the cycle that is self-discovery, that is growth, we have to at some point step into an arena that's foreign to us, that we don't yet understand. We have to be willing to operate with inadequate resources, trusting that, they'll be picked up along the way. And that's a lot to take in. It's painful to know that others are going to have knowledge and skills and competencies that you won't. That you'll willingly inject yourself into the bottom of some hierarchy with nothing more than aspirations. But that willingness is your vehicle. And what's clear is that everyone wants the moon, but very few people have the courage to start constructing that spaceship. Very few have the courage to be the student. That's why our inclination is to quit when we can't snap our fingers and magically be on our way, when we can't leap past that wandering around the unknowns. The reality is, we have to fight, to scrap to obtain that sense of belonging in a particular competency. And just talking about it brings me back. It's an obstacle that we all face. It's super real to me. I remember being featured on a podcast where the host literally asked me, why should I listen to what you have to say? Right? Like, who are you? Why are you road mapping your journey? Right? I remember fighting for relevance in an area in which, at the time I knew almost nothing about. And I love how Peterson articulates this battle. He says at some point, you'll want to make a change and you'll feel like an imposter. And guess what? You are. But you have to be. You'll ultimately feel worse if you don't do it. That's imposter syndrome. Feeling like a stranger in your own body. And guess what? It's not wrong. It's just a beginning. I like explaining it like jumping into a cold pool. It feels uncomfortable at first. It feels out of place, but then things normalize. They become comfortable. And what's the other option? To fear that minute of discomfort and never jump in? It's what we need to tell ourselves when we want something, but the climb seems too steep, right? That climb is manageable. You'll acclimate. The adversary's pushing beyond that fear of starting anew, taking your limited understanding, bringing it to the base of that mountain, a new Goliath, and looking up with confidence. And the question is, can you be foolish enough to do that? And once you've made that ceiling your next floor, will you be foolish enough to do it again and again and again? And breaking through that fear, knowing that stumbling around for a period of time doesn't kill you, it's required. It's the inability to show weakness or appear vulnerable. That's what chips away at you for a lifetime. If you want more, immerse yourself in that cycle of mastery. Start at the bottom and ascend. And when you approach the top, separate yourself and find another ceiling to chase. Replant a seed. Play the role of the fool again. This is the formula for growth, for prosperity, for fulfillment. This is the pathway to anything of substance. You take your L's, you embrace your critics, you swallow your pride, and move towards a tomorrow that far exceeds today. As your reality changes, your perception changes, the company you keep changes, you'll start to see that what's around you is made by people who are willing to fail and fail often. Our world is one devised by those who could put pride on hold, by those who were humble enough to crawl through the unknown long before they ran anything, who knew that before they played for any title or championship, they must first play the fool. One of my favorite anecdotes or mantras is work hard in silence, let success be your noise. That idea, in my mind, is perfection. Let your growth, your evolution, and yes, ultimately your accolades do the speaking for you. This always hit home for me for two reasons. One, because things of value come with a hefty price tag. We know this. Excellence requires sacrifice. It is, in many ways, both a daunting and worthwhile pursuit. And two, well, because we often conflate flailing around with progress. In fact, some of my favorite books, whether it be Deep Work by Cal Newport, Relentless by Tim Grover, The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, part of what captivates me with these is the emphasis on what we are willing to do in silence, behind the scenes. That's where true meaning and value materializes. It's also where it's most difficult to commit and continue forward, because in silence, there is no audience clapping for you. There is no validation. When you're building and reading and improving, when you're at the gym or on those calls, establishing that foundation, putting in the hours, it's easy to look around and have doubts. Right? Our brains go, I did the work, where's the reward? I sacrificed, so where's the payout? It's not intuitive to understand that, hey, it's not visible yet. One of my favorite metaphors, the lily pad pond, in which there is a pond with lily pads doubling in size every day, and on day 30, the pond is completely covered with them. So what day was the pond half covered? And if we're thinking quickly, we might be inclined to say, well, half of 30 is 15, so it was half covered on day 15. But that's wrong, because if they're doubling every day, that pond wasn't half covered until day 29, and only a quarter covered on day 28. Meaning every day before then, the change was so small that perhaps it wasn't even visible to the naked eye. So small that to onlookers, the prospect of it one day being covered might have seemed far-fetched. But what was at work was the necessary change to set the stage, to start what would ultimately become the exponential growth that is noticeable, impactful. Now, of course, lily pads are not human, but little thought experiment, let's say they had been. I'd like to believe that talking about their growth, their plans, right, them screaming about how great they are and what they will someday be would not have helped them grow faster. In fact, it might have potentially even distracted the necessary evolution. The growth was not them versus the world, it was them versus them. And that's the idea, right? It's okay to work on you, to make a deal, sign a contract with yourself that you are doing something now that only you understand, that won't be visible until a later date. Let success be your noise, because there's often zero correlation between the loudest person and the one making the greatest impact. Let success be your noise, because you can't fake
competency. Let success be your noise, because leaders don't need to proclaim they lead, and winners don't need to prove they've won, and virtuous people don't advertise their virtue. It's in the doing. That's where we pay the price, the steep price. I've always said the last 10 years for me, the hardest part wasn't failing. It was not when things didn't go as planned. The hardest part was simply not knowing. It was the whisper that, hey, all this could be for naught. That I'm wasting my time, that the whole idea is a car without wheels, and that's what hurt. But if I could go back in time, talk to my younger self, I would say, all this, all of it, the ups, downs, highs, lows, it's making you who you need to be. And if something doesn't work or go as you planned it originally, relax. You learn, you adjust, and you move forward. That's how the doubling of lily pads, right, using the same metaphor, occurs. You're learning, you're growing, and that's a you thing. I talked a few weeks ago now about the difference between a fee and a fine, as discussed in The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. The weight of not knowing, it isn't a fine, it's not a penalty, it's the fee. It's the cost to get into the show, the ticket to something greater. But you have to walk through that door. Again, it's a decision, it's personal, it's a commitment. It's nothing that screaming and seeking attention brings. You have to trust yourself, believe in yourself, right? Your effort is doubling in size. It's compounding exponentially, and you don't need to convince others. You need to stay consistent and build yourself up until the world has to notice. Trust the mission you're on. As long as you're, 1, moving forward, and 2, learning and adjusting, you are destined for something greater. By committing, you have stacked the deck. By believing in yourself, you have rigged the game. It's about hearing and believing that voice that says, there's more in store for those who take it. And you are capable of that. That's the decision that will ultimately ring so loud, it will echo through time. I read something this morning that said at some point in your childhood, you and your friends went outside to play together for the last time and nobody knew it. It seems to me that many of life's last times elude us. We aren't aware of the pages turning or chapters ending. The phases of life essentially blend into each other, one fading into the next. In fact, we don't even realize the extent to which things have changed until we peer back over our shoulders. See, life is happening to us now. While we plan, hope, and pray for better days, 99.99% of life consists of the time that exists between the so-called pivotal life events. The average, the ordinary, the things that we pay no mind to. So what's the relevance? Why does this matter? Well, because the sun coming up in the morning is life. Pouring your coffee is life. Small talk with your loved ones is life. The art you're creating, music you're listening to, the workouts at the gym, they are life. And not in a so you better be grateful or else kind of way, but in a if you don't understand this, contentment will be incredibly hard to capture kind of way. I have a lot of favorite quotes, but this one tops them all. Character Andy Bernard from The Office. He says in an episode, "I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them."
And I can't get over how that statement proves itself to be true repeatedly, over and over again. How it's not until we peer over our shoulders that we realize how lucky we were, how much fun we had, how much the time meant. I recently went to a wedding for one of my best friends from childhood. And funny enough, we only lived in the same state for 4 years, from 4th grade to 8th grade, before I moved across the country to Massachusetts. And I thought, as I flew to the wedding, you know what, I should post a picture of us as kids together, say congrats. And I quickly realized on the plane ride that I don't think we have any, right? It's essentially only memories. It's the stories that we still to this day laugh about, those events that shaped our childhoods, the things kids go through that change the way we look at the world. And all that happens so fast. I think it remains so precious because we were so fully immersed in it. It was such a simple time, pivotal, and gone in a snap. I had no idea it would mean anything 20 years later, but that's life. It seems to go by in an instant. Which is why I think we need to find that sweet spot. Respect for the duality between sometimes sacrificing the present for a better future, an ability that makes humans remarkable creatures, and also enjoying and realizing how precious the ride, how beautiful the now. Whether the current season is ideal, a struggle, or in between, to feel something at all in its own unique way is a miracle. And if we look, we'll find that there is good here. There's growth here. There are moments that you'll look back on and smile at, knowing that they shaped you and played a role in who you're becoming. So the point is, as we make our way through life, its highs and lows, perhaps look around and make an effort to see the beauty in the journey. Understand that nothing is forever. The people you talk to, places you go, the things you do, they will all dissipate. And while sure, the now may not be perfect, and in some cases even a stepping stone along the way to a better, wiser, stronger you, the idea shouldn't be to long for the enjoyable part, but to realize you are in it. To know that some of these things we take for granted will be missed when they're gone. Let's not fall into the trap of letting life go by while we waited for it to begin. Let's, as Andy Bernard stated, remember that the good old days are right now, and embrace today as the truly incredible gift, opportunity, and finite ride that it is. There's power in simplification. Not because you can't handle the complex, but because too much noise drowns out the meaning. It gets in the way of the things that actually make the difference. Our blessing and curse is the finitude of our time. So by default, that makes the word no a gatekeeper to the contentment we feel in our lives. What are you keeping out? What are you saving space for? Clarity is not a luxury, but a necessity. And when one has limited capacity, they must both cherish and protect it. So why does this matter? It matters because when you simplify things, the path is never as intimidating. The problem is never unsolvable. The opportunity is never too far away. It matters because we dress the solutions up in irrelevant detail and then call them the problem. We don't see things as what they are. We see them as stories we tell ourselves. We see too much, and it just so happens that the biggest leaps forward one can take in life are the result of not secret formulas or hidden answers, but in freeing ourselves of that excess. Saying no to the wrong things so that we can say yes to the right things. Underneath the stacks and accumulation of nothing is something. There's something to the notion that the road to recovery is always a single decision away. That it's already there. But you just haven't been able to acknowledge, to choose it. When life becomes convoluted, there's this tendency to think, I am the problem, I am broken, I am incapable of X or Y or Z. And it's like, no, you've just let so much in that what was once obvious is now buried. You're looking at the giant ocean before you, forgetting that a very tiny boat can traverse it. Basics. Let's ask the question, where is it I most want to go? And what would one step in that direction look like? Sometimes we have to go knowing that mile 10 will have its monsters, and mile 50 will have its setbacks. But to not take step 1 in anticipation of those future problems, of something way down the road, is letting that excess in. Simplicity is the goal. Simplicity. Ask yourself, can you start? Right? Beginning grants you one of the greatest weapons to possess, an ability to adjust, the ability to adapt, the ability to utilize the now. And this is not to dismiss the pain and difficulty associated with our most challenging times. It's to remind you that during those times you feel lost or closed in, you don't need to reinvent the world to your left and right. It's not bigger than you. So much of the time, it's about composing yourself enough to reach out for the light switch that will illuminate the path just enough for you to look up and walk right out the front door.